Hello everyone, and we are back for another chapter call for the fanfic. The next Aeron chapter is nearly complete. That should be coming out within the next few weeks. It's looking good, so keep an eye out for that. Which brings us to the north, where everyone is most excited about, and the Asha chapter. Now with the Asha chapter, we actually have a tiny bit of the chapter provided for us with the Asha fragment. Additionally, George did foreshadow a bit with the Asha chapters in A Dance with Dragons. Certainly on my first read, I predicted that the armies would be falling through the ice. And this was before even finding out that there was a historical battle of ice, and in the movie dramatization of it, people fell through the ice. And this has been expanded on a bit with Can't Use's night lamp theory, so we're pretty much going with that. Timeline-wise, this chapter takes place about 3 days after the Theon sample chapter. I understand that there's a feeling in that chapter of immediacy, like battle is about to happen, but no, the Freys have men on foot. Logistically, they would be days behind Theon. So as it happens, I was trying to fill in the Asha fragment and got a little carried away. So I have a rough draft of the beginning of the story. You're welcome to edit, change, improve, delete any part of this. It's just my rough draft. Asha. She was the blood of the kraken, daughter of the Lord Reaper of Pyke. But that mattered little today. There's no sea for 100 leagues, Asha thought, as she took a moment to gauge the lay of the land. That land was white. The snow was still falling and had blanketed the village, the lakes, the camp. For now, all looked empty, clean, like a fresh sheet of paper waiting to be filled. History is written blood. Her nuncle Rodrick had told her something like that, but Asha doubted anyone would ever read of her. How could they? Whatever blood was put down in the morning light would be buried by midday. Most daughters are forgotten, she knew. But she was not most daughters. Most daughters would be here, axe in hand, waiting for battle. Fighting for a demon, drown me for a fool. The Southerners were given the right wing. The enemy had cavalry, Benjakat Branch reported, so the men had been armed with spears, forming rank on rank of steel hoarfrost. Under a fiery heart banner heavy with snow, Sir Richard Horp commanded, the knight mounted atop a grey palfrey. As thin as the horse was, it was one of the healthier ones, taken from the lot the Bravosi banker had brought in the night. The moths on Sir Richard's shield were caked over with ice, but Asha could make out some of the other men's heraldry. The fox head of Florent, the pod of Peaseberry, the spruce trees of Fell. Big Bucket Wall led the left. Behind his shaggy Garen stood hundreds of spears from his own clan, clad in fur and mail, with bear paws lashed to their boots. Farther back were Norries and Knots, Harclays and Littles, Burleys and Flints. This morning, the quarrelsome Northerners almost looked orderly. But will they stay that way? Ranks of spears require obedience and discipline. Yet these Northmen no doubt wanted glory for themselves. It could be their undoing. The middle was Arthur Karstark's. Stannis had given the traitor's son a chance to prove himself, against the counsel of his second. Banners with a white sunburst sprouted amongst the 1,200 spearmen. The only 1 in 3 soldiers was truly sworn to Carhold. Let no man call Stannis unwary. Clansmen were the bulk of the army, 1 on each shoulder of the Karstark men. Beneath the snow, however, the men all looked much alike. The king led from the rear, as Greenland kings were wont to do. There, the paltry reserve gathered around them, a cavalry of 200 knights and a dozen Northmen. Asha and her 6 Ironborn were mounted with them, though only Triss and Rogan looked comfortable ahorse. From their islet, they would see the campaign unfold on the flat land before them, and ride to where they were needed. If our mounts don't die when spurred. And in truth, they couldn't see that far. Their hill was scarcely higher than a stage, and the falling snow curtained much and more of the world. The woods beyond the Crofters' village were hidden, as too was the far side of camp and the king's tower. Even the flame atop it was gone. The foe might have marched right by them, and no one would be the wiser, like a reaver overlooking prey on a starless night. If it weren't for the pyre. To the right of the reserve, the fire still roared, its garish flames matching the heart inlaid on Stannis' breastplate. To his helm, 2 weirwood branches had been affixed, giving him what looked like a stag's antlers. The wood had come from the tree on the left, its face as pale and stern as the king's. Between two gods, and neither of them mine. True to his word, Stannis had swung the sword himself. It was as a Stark of Winterfell would have done, she reminded him. The blade danced with blinding light as it sliced through the scrawny neck. Before the weirwood, blood sprayed out, as red as summer cherries. The show made the Northmen roar with delight. Then, Sir Godry and Sir Corlys fed the body to the flames, the king himself tossing the head on the pyre. To that, the Southerners cheered. It was not long before the snow by the weirwood was white again. It's still hungry. A trumpet sounded somewhere in the east, harsh and angry. "Fight hard today, cunt," Sir Clayton Suggs said as he rode up beside Asha. "Like you're mad with moonblood." "I can give you a bloody gash, if you'd like strength to your arm." She spun the axe in her hand. Suggs laughed, then grew serious. He closed his visor. Asha knew to do the same. Out of the falling snow, she spotted a horse. Then 5, then 50, then 500. And with them, 1,000 men-at-arms. They were here. The leader of the enemy wore silvered plate and mail, inlaid with details of lapis lazuli. The crest of the war helm was tall, fashioned in the shape of the twin towers of House Frey. His shield bore those same towers, quartered with the snakes of Page and the Treant ravens of Blackwood. Before him rode banner-bearers. One bore the star and lion standard of King Tommen, another the twin towers. The third brandished a bloody head impaled upon the point of a tall spear. An old man's head it was, white-bearded and one-eyed. The spear was 8 feet long, a pale wood, almost white. Drippings of flesh along its upper shaft had frozen there, dark and red. Crow-food umber, Asha knew. The old Northman had fought to the death, it seemed. Perhaps the foe had thought the sight of the severed head would strike terror in the hearts of Stannis' men. The king gave a signal, and this time it was his trumpets that blared. The two armies charged. They rushed together like waves in a storm, the air filled with a spray of snow. And so that's my rough draft of the beginning. Obviously it's not perfect. George would probably talk about trumpets and horns more, and there's no mention of archers. It probably needs archers. Anyway, after this, we essentially just need a lot of really great descriptions of battle. I essentially see the rest of the chapter being broken up into 4 major parts. The first part would describe that first crash of spearmen on spearmen, and then Hosteen would logically try to flank Big Bucket Wool with his cavalry. Now remember, Hosteen Frey is the man holding the head. We'll call him headsman here. He is not who Asha thinks is the commander. But remember, Hosteen is an incredible fighter. And so we have to have Asha describing this headsman just tearing through people right and left. I mean, after he tosses the head aside, of course. Now we need to put Asha in the action. So in part 2, I think some mounted archers should start firing at Stannis and the reserve. And so half the riders are sent out to deal with them. And these include our Ironborn. That is, Tris Botley, Carl the Maid, Fingers, Rogan Rustbeard, Rook, and Grimtongue. And the lesser knights. William Foxglove, Humphrey Clifton, Ormond Wild, Harrys Cobb. We're going to have lots of battle, lots of blood, make it interesting, and remember that Grimtongue counts as kills. And then in part 3, Asha's going to notice that the commander of the Freys is back a bit from the battle. This, of course, is because this is actually Big Walder, a scared 10-year-old boy, but Asha is going to think that she is going to have all of the glory and Stannis' praise by killing or capturing the commander. So she and her Ironborn will ride on Big Walder and just go to town on him. I'm not sure if he should die or if he should just be very wounded and call for mercy. You make the call. This is a setup for Asha to be severely mocked and feel massively guilty in future chapters. Anyway, while Asha is dealing with the either dead or wounded commander, she sees the Manderly forces heading right towards her. She thinks that she will die, but then the horses pass her by. The Manderlys attack the Frey forces and are fighting for Stannis. Asha is absolutely elated. We watch the Manderly carnage for a while, and then the ice breaks. We have a huge crack, a huge shift in the ground, sliding. Absolute chaos, people falling through the ice, Asha fighting for her life. This needs to be big and crazy. Do what you like with it. I only ask that Carl the Maid dies. And if you'd like some inspiration on what the chaos would look like, please check out the movie Alexander Nevsky, The whole movie is on YouTube, and at the 1 hour 22 minutes mark, you'll have the ice breaking. The movie seems to focus a bit on the flipping pieces of ice. Anyway, good luck, and I hope to read some good chapters. Thanks a bunch.